Hi, my name is Tracie Thor, and I am a Senior Director for Organizational Development and Learning for Ascension Health, which is the parent company for Seton Healthcare here in Austin. I have about 25 years plus as HR generalist, moving up to Senior HR Manager. And then I also have 10 years of adjunct professor in the HRM field. I've been in organizational development for probably the last 7 to 8 years.
So you've worked as a consultant in human resource management and human resource development. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of a consultant?
Yeah, so a consultant is someone who has expertise, knowledge, and a particular field, particularly in HR or organizational management or development. And they're going to work very closely with key stakeholders, such as leaders within an organization, with HR, the HR team, whether it's delivery, your HR partners, generalists, and associates at times too. But it's consulting with them, bringing their knowledge and experience to have some conversations, trying to understand what the need is or what the ask is, what the situation is, and then offering some recommendations, not necessarily doing the work, but helping to frame up what are some things or recommendations that they can do to help solve whatever problem or issues that they're having.
So how does an individual get into a consultant type role? How do you migrate into that with your career?
That's a great question. So there's probably many different paths to becoming an OD consultant. But like an HR generalist, it takes time, right? You've got to build the capabilities in the functional areas. So someone can become a trainer, and so let's see they're a basic trainer, or maybe they come into the organization as managing or training their new hires orientation program and managing that, or maybe training some of their basic skills. And then they build that competency up where then maybe they become a trainer of your leadership programs and actually building curriculum and building programs and delivering on that. Another way a lot of folks get into OD like I did is coming through the HR track. If you look at HR and how it's trending today, a lot of HR generalist roles really have a consulting aspect to it. So it's not only having that HR expertise, but how are you going to apply that? How are you going to consult with your key stakeholders, your associates, your leaders, or whatever, to really help solve issues and help be proactive in driving the organization forward? And so I would say that a lot of HR roles nowadays, from a generalist perspective, our partner, is really that strategic role in being a consultant. So having an HR experience and background is a great segue into going into a deeper dive into organizational development. Another way is, some individuals, they know exactly what they want, and they go to school and they get their master's in industrial psychology or organizational development. And so you can get your bachelor's and your master's in OD specific type roles, and then use that to apply to an organization from an internal perspective.
A student who is interested in becoming an OD professional, can you tell us what the knowledge, skills, and abilities are, or the critical competencies that they would need in that field?
Yeah, so typically someone in OD is going to have at least a bachelor's. Most of them have a master's or a PhD. They're also going to have 5 to 7 years of experience, because like I said, a lot of times you're a consultant. If you're coming as a trainer, that's different. A lot of organizations will train someone to be a trainer if they have a bachelor's and some kind of knowledge in human resources or organizational development. So that's the educational piece. And I think the competencies that are really critical to the success of someone in an OD consultant type role is having that collaborative skill, being able to pull the right people together and collaborate across. Someone has strong communication skills, both verbally and written communication skills. Someone who can consult, like, again, take a concept and really dive deeper into that, helping the individual that you're consulting with come to their own resolution, right? And again, they've got to carry that work. So how do you get them to really think differently and provide some recommendations for them? Also having a strong business acumen. I mean, you've got to know data, you've got to know trending, you've got to do research, and you got to be able to bring all that together to help drive those outcomes that that leader or that organization is looking for, and make those recommendations. But you got to have that data and really understand the business to be able to apply that. And then the last thing I would say is influencing skills. You know, a lot of times a consultant, and I've always been internal consultant, not necessarily external consultant, but as an internal consultant, right, it's that influence. You may not have authority, like power. Maybe your role, you know, as an OD consultant, you may not have anybody reporting into you, but yet you've got to influence the decisions that are made, and you've got to influence your organization to make the decisions that follow through on the decisions that you're recommending. So influencing skills is really critical.
So for students who are thinking about, this is what I do, this is what I do over the course of a year, perhaps what are the key initiatives that individuals in OD would handle?
So some of the key initiatives that we handle in my organization for OD is, you know, the first one is really around employee engagement, right? And so I'm sure you've been in organizations where they do surveys, right? So those engagement surveys or employee surveys to find out what's going on with your employee base. How are they feeling about their jobs and their leaders and the communication and satisfaction in the job? Well, the OD organization typically is the group that's going to help do the assessments, understand the culture and the pulse on the organization. So employee engagement is really important. Also, when you talk about employee engagement, it starts from the first day when they come into the organization. So oftentimes OD manages the new hires orientation, but it's that first day when an individual comes into your organization, and how are you going to embed them into your culture, your mission, your values, right, in the organization. The other thing that we do is, you know, with new leaders coming on, it's making sure that the leaders have the right tools and the resources to be successful in their roles, not only from a technical leadership perspective, but really from a people leader perspective, right? What is your culture like, and how do you help them to lead the organization in the right way, and their employees that they that report into them in the right way. And then, you know, I would say team building, and I'm very careful on how I use that word, because there's a lot of misperception out there that OD handles the team building and the service awards and, you know, employee picnics or whatever, things like that. We really don't. And when I say team building, it's really about team dynamics. So when I have a leader come to me and say, I'm having issues with my team or an employee of mine or whatever, can you come do some team building exercise and fix it? Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk a bit more about what's the root cause. What is it really that's going on in your organization? Because maybe it's not a team building event that they need. Maybe it's, you know, some critical skill building that they need. Or maybe it's communication skills that they need. And so it's just really, again, consulting, asking the questions, understanding what's going on at the root cause, and then maybe doing some team building. Maybe you're going to do an assessment, a personality assessment. But you can't just do the assessment. Then you have to do some debriefing and really figure out helping them on how to put that into practice and keep that hardwired and ongoing in the organization. The other thing that we manage as far as initiative in our organization is performance management. So, you know, really from the evaluation perspective, so you're setting goals, you're assessing them along the year, it should be an ongoing process, and then you're evaluating them. So how are we helping the leaders and the associates prepare for their self-evals and for their leader evals? How are they effectively having those conversations, effective conversations, and then driving for results? And then that should lead to what are the gaps and the opportunities for skill development and maybe capabilities. Another initiative that we handle is talent stewardship, and that's really around succession planning, building your bench strength, And again, you got to do an assessment. Maybe it's assessing, your current workforce around what are their knowledge, skills, and abilities that they have. What's the desire or the successful job profile look like? And then what are the gaps and how are you going to help them get there? Maybe having a mentor program. So, whether it be formal or informal. And so the OT consultant would help in facilitating those types of programs. Another initiative is around talent development, so learning development. And again, the difference between education and development, right? Education is just really you're teaching a capability, but a development is actually taking it and putting it into practice, maybe doing case studies, maybe it's a real job preview for them, but it's really putting that education, what it is, the knowledge that you're teaching them, and how do they apply that. So we will design and develop and will deliver different learning programs, whether it be an actual course or whether it be a full program. The other thing that we do is career coaching and pathing. So we'll have conversations with associates or leaders and just kind of assess, how are you doing in your role? How do you feel about your role? And if you're at the cap and you've done everything that you could in that role, maybe it's time to move on to something else. And it's not necessarily just promoting up, but maybe going across. And so what's another opportunity for you to expand your skills and your capabilities? Having those kinds of conversations. Another area of focus is around organizational effectiveness. So again, if we have a leader that comes to me and they want to grow their business and expand their landscape, I'm going to help them to understand. So what are what's the talent they're going to need for that? How many folks are they going to need? What's the skill set for those folks? Do they have a current staff that maybe they need to upskill or get new talent in, and just kind of have conversations around that. It's also doing things like looking at the structure, right? Current structure versus current state and future state, and what are the gaps and how are we going to help them get there. We do what's called a SWOT analysis, which is really looking at the external data, but then there's what we call an environmental scan, which is really looking at the internal perspective of the organization. So how are employees feeling about, looking at the associate engagement or the employee engagement results? How are they feeling about their organizations and their job? What does the structure look like? Where is it that you are currently as far as your processes and all of that? And then where do you want to get to, and how do I help get you there? We consult around our culture. Culture is really important. So is it clear as to what our mission and values are? And then is it lived out? Or is it just something that you have up on the wall, right? So helping a leader and the associates really embrace what that culture is. And if there's a gap missing, well, maybe you can do a culture assessment, right? And really understand what is it that's missing, and then help make recommendations on how they can really connect to their mission and values that they state that they want to have in place. So I think that's really the last. Those are the major initiatives. There are other things that we do too, but those are the major initiatives.
That is a lot. You've really given students a wonderful perspective of how the job is going to be lived throughout the year and all the great things that they could possibly encounter during that year. But one of the things that students would like to really hear about are the challenges. What are some of the challenges of your role?
Oh, we don't have any. I would say a lot of the challenges that I'm faced on a day-to-day basis is really the competing priorities. We've got priorities that come down from the corporate office. We're a very matrix organization, so we have a corporate office, we have a market presence, and then you have your functional leaders. So you've got priorities coming from you in all different directions, and we've got to help manage that, right? And so when you've got your organization coming to you, your leaders and your associates coming to you, and they're needing something, I've got to help quickly understand how does that fit into the workload that I have, right? The key initiatives that we have, and how does that align to the big business initiatives, right? There should be a line of sight. And if it's not a critical need, then we've got to help influence and have that conversation about how else can we get their needs met, right? So a lot of the challenges around the competing priorities. The other thing, again, it's part of that competing priority is that I might have a priority that comes down from corporate that's non-negotiable, that I've got to, launch this new leader management program. And I'm going out to the business and sharing about this great tool and program that, we think will be effective, and here's why, right? We see a higher turnover in our frontline leaders based on our employee engagement survey results. It's showing that our leaders feel like they don't have the right capabilities to do their job or the right tools and resources to do their job, and that we've got this program that can help meet some of that need. But yet you're talking to the leaders and like, whoa, I've got all these things I've got to do. I don't have time for training. I don't have time for development. I've got to get these widgets out the door. I've got to take care of these patients, whatever it is. And so it's really being able to, again, influence and help them see that whatever it is that you're trying to influence them to launch or to take on is critical to their business need. And so the challenge is to really understand how to connect that and how to sell that in a way that they understand and recognize that that's critical for them, for their success and what you're doing. So the competing parties. And then the other thing is the collaboration. In a matrix organization, again, I have key stakeholders at the local level, I have them at the regional level, and I have them at the national level. And so I've got to manage all of that. And sometimes, when something comes to me, whatever it's an initiative or a policy change or whatever it is, and I've got to get some folks together, I'm constantly asking myself, who else needs to know this? Who else needs to be involved in this? Who else touches this work? Both at the local level, the regional level, and the national level, and getting the right people together, and then asking questions to brainstorm and think about what is it that we want, what is the real thing, the outcomes that we want to get to, or what is it that we're really trying to solve, and then what's our current state and how are we getting there. And that's pretty much every conversation I have. So it's really understanding who are the right people that need to be involved in that decision-making process so that you're having the right outcomes that you're expecting to get.
Wow, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge with the students.
Thank you for having me.
If you are in or around the Round Rock, Texas geographic location, please join the Williamson County Human Resource Management Association on the second Fridays of every month for continuing education and networking opportunities. More information can be found at wilcohr.org. A special thank you to Tracie Thor for providing her time and perspectives of HR to aspiring students.